Julie, thank you for coming in, speaking with us.
Thank you, Saundra.
As somebody who is a talent acquisition consultant for a Fortune 50 company, when somebody responds to a job posting in a large company, what happens on the corporate side?
Well, that's a great question, and it's one that I get from a lot of candidates. So most large companies have what's called an applicant tracking system, and there are many vendors that actually do contract with these large companies. So when an applicant actually does apply, it goes into a database, and each requisition that we open has a list of different pre-screening questions that each applicant has to answer before they can actually even be considered an applicant. So on a typical, say, senior accountant position, I would have probably a total of 12 requirements and maybe about 8 preferred skills, totaling about 20 questions, which will take an applicant about 60 minutes.
What are your thoughts for a candidate responding to a job description where their background might not be exactly relevant to the position? Is there any advantage, or should they only respond if they're relevant?
Well, whenever I do have another opening come up, regardless of whether they've met the requirements for a position or not, I do have the opportunity to search within the database. So once you're in the database, you're in the database. And so I would say if you're close, because very often many of the hires that I get are people that I source myself out of the database.
So you will go back to the database to see if there's any appropriate candidates when new requisitions come up?
With almost every new position that I work on, yes.
How important is a cover letter?
A cover letter really helps me to understand what the intent or the motivation is of the candidate. So they get through those 20 questions or how many questions that we write. Then they get through the first pass, which is by the recruiter. So for instance, 200 people would apply. That's pretty normal to a senior accountant position. Typically about 60% of them will meet the requirements. And then we will pick maybe our top 20 to 30 resumes based on just like companies, years of experience, progression of their career, et cetera, et cetera. Of those 20 to 30 resumes that I would look at, I'll read the cover letters. If someone has actually taken the time to write a thoughtful cover letter that is specific to my company and shows a genuine interest, then they get into that top 10 that I will call and screen.
Do you have any pet peeves on resumes or cover letters that you would see and automatically discount or think unfavorably towards that person?
Grammatical errors. Every recruiter's pet peeve, to be a good corporate recruiter.
Why is that important?
Because it shows someone's thoughtfulness. How you get from the 80 to the 6 is all based on how clean your resume is, how conscientious you are, and because it's so competitive right now, it has to be perfect. And so the content in the resume and how it's formatted is so important.
Julie, I know you're extremely busy. Thank you very much for coming in and sharing your expertise with us.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.